And welcome back, Fourth and Long fans. It's your footy correspondent, Coach Donnie Hess here, back with another off-season supporter series chat. And pardon me if I'm a little bit quieter because as I look at my clock right now, it is almost 5 a.m. my time because the fun sometimes with talking with people in Australia is time difference. So here we go. Let's join it. Joining me all the way from Western Australia, we have Stephen. Stephen, thank you for joining me this evening.
Thank you very much indeed, Donnie. How's tricks?
All righty. Before we get started talking the footy, I kind of like finding out just the littlest bit about the person that I'm talking with outside of the game of football. So, real quickly, a bio about yourself outside of the game of football.
Doing during the day, I'm a bus driver. I've worked in retail previously for about 10, 11 years, and also did a bit of volunteer work after. So yeah, I enjoy going to the gym, playing a bit of squash, and enjoying a few brews.
There's nothing wrong with that. All righty. Being out in
Fucking
WA,
oath. The old
being
bush chook, the
Already,
best beer.
absolutely. Yep. All right. Best thing about being out in WA is it is a footy mad state. So I ask you this, sir. What is your
Indeed.
favorite thing about the sport of footy?
My favourite thing, I suppose, you can always get see a crowd at the footy. Doesn't matter if it's a local game, doesn't matter if it's a amateur game, or even the WAFL or the AFL. You can always get a crowd there, and they're always cheering their teams on.
Absolutely love it. All right. So I want you to do me a favor. I want you to go back into your memory a little bit and I want you to pick this out.
hmm
Can you remember your earliest footy memory?
Yeah, I can actually. It would have been the '92 AFL Grand Final with West Coast Eagles and Geelong. Um, West Coast actually won won their very first grand final. And basically, it was the first time that any team, any VFL, AFL, won it outside Victoria. Now, literally at the time, every single street in Perth was dead quiet. Even the main freeway was dead quiet because everyone was tuned in to watch the game. I mean, I was 4 years old at the time, but I still remember it like yesterday.
I love that memory. And again, to kind of break the VFL a little bit and surprise them by a WA team with West Coast knocking off Geelong to be the first ever non-original VFL AFL team to win a flag is absolutely fantastic. Now, as I've told people, I want to chat stateside. So today I get to learn about another stateside. So as a WA person, tell me what waffle club am I going to learn about today?
Today, Donnie, you're going to learn about South Fremantle.
All righty. And why is it that you're a South Fremantle supporter?
Um, their slogan is the family club. Um, they've had a lot of good players over the years. Um, John Todd, who became the youngest person um, in the history of the Sandover medal, or actually in the waffle rather. He won the Sandover medal back in 1955. He was a young 17-year-old who won it, and yeah, he became a coach of that club, and then he also became a captain. And he is revered down there as an absolute legend. Also, Steve Michael. Steve Michael came from, I believe he came from, don't quote me on this, down in Great Southern, area of like Pingelly, Narrogin. Um, and he came up here just to play football, and basically he became a legend. Um, who was John Worsfold? Um, he was also a captain. He started off playing with West Coast Eagles after they were what's the word? Um, after their in their very first season in 1987. In about 91, he became the captain. Obviously, they won their first premiership in 92 and won again in 94. In 98, Worcester retired. It's John Westall's nickname. And about 4 years later, he came back as coach, and he finished up with them about 11 years later. He also led the West Coast Eagles to a premiership. Who else can I think of? Um, now, Mark Jacko Jackson's played for the club. He's also played for Melbourne and Richmond. Mal Brown also coached back in the 80s. He's also played for Richmond and played for Claremont and Perth in the WAFL and East Fremantle. I mean, sorry, not East Fremantle. Don't shoot me. East Perth as well. So, got quite a few legends in the club.
All right. Hey, is and I know sometimes with the waffle, a lot like the AFL, is that clubs, the supporters tend to be family. The family tends to support different things like that. So kind of how is the kind of distribution of supporters in your particular family when it comes to the Waffle Club? Is everybody South Fremantle? Do you have some South Fremantle in some of the other clubs? Kind of how is that? And if there are different clubs, how's the banter?
Um, on my dad's side, because my dad and his family grew up in the western suburbs, a suburb here called Swanbourne, they supported the Claremont Tigers. My grandma supported them, and so did my dad and his brothers for a little while. On my mum's side, um, tend to support either South Fremantle or East Fremantle in the waffle. I I'd always support South Fremantle because in that area of areas like Hilton, Beaconsfield, that's where my mum's side comes from. I've also been doing a bit of family research that my great grandmother on my dad's side came from South Fremantle as well. So I think that's why I also support them.
I love when you hear that the family history sometimes is always cool too. Again, you get the passing down, and I know that I've even heard some stories when it comes to it. The families kind of they make their children support their club sometimes, which is always absolutely interesting hearing the stories of when they were born, the first thing that they ever wore was whatever their club's jumper or Guernsey was. So I always love those stories. All right, so you did a little bit of my next question a little bit, but I'd like just a tiny little bit more. Can you tell me just the tiniest bit of history that you know of South Fremantle, kind of when they were started, how many premierships that you know that they've had, just little history that you do know of.
They started back in 1900. Started of the 1900s basically. It's the same year that Perth started as well, I believe. Um, they they've won quite a few premierships. The most recent one in 2020 in the COVID pandemic. They had grand final at their home ground in at Fremantle Oval, and there was about 17,000 all fitted into that ground. I was there that day, and it was the scene was just electric. You know, they they didn't win any premierships in the 70s. They won one in 1980, and they had a 17-year gap, which was my earliest waffle memory of South Fremantle winning the 97 premiership. In that year they had a really good goal kicker who played for the West Coast Eagles, Peter Sumich, and his brother, and obviously I was telling you about John Worsfold, his brother Peter played for South Fremantle too at that time. And that's when John Codd was coaching South Fremantle. So, um, but they didn't win any premierships in the 70s. I think their last one was before 1980 would have been in the 60s.
Awesome. I love hearing the stories of the history of each of these clubs. So, and I'm still doing some more research, but thank you for letting me know that. So, I love this question because the AFL has these bitter rivals, Collingwood, Carlton, you have the SA clubs with Port Adelaide and Adelaide. So I asked
Mm,
this, South Fremantle, who is your biggest rivalry and why?
that would be East Fremantle, because they're actually right across from us in obviously East Fremantle. We play two derbies a year, one at the home ground at Fremantle, and last year, well, because East Fremantle Oval are getting a revamp at the moment, they play Des at the WACA. So that's their home ground for another year or two. Um, basically, um, you could actually have it around in their golden years, let's say the 70s. You were able to get that East. You sorry, you were able to get Fremantle Oval chockers. So that people will go down for either for the South Fremantle East Fremantle Derby, and um, basically, hopefully at the time, would South Fremantle would win. But there'll be times where East Fremantle did. Um, back then, 1979. Sorry, I'm going back in history here. 1979, South Fremantle and East Fremantle played a Derby Grand Final, and East Fremantle won. 1998, 7. It was South Fremantle and East Fremantle. South Fremantle won. 98. It was South Fremantle and East Fremantle again, and East Fremantle won the 98 premiership. So there's been a lot of history between the two clubs,
Well,
and
and nothing. Go ahead.
there's always a huge crowd down at Fremantle Oval whenever there is a derby on. I'll tell you that.
Well, closeness brings animosity at times. I know the biggest rivalry for our gridiron football team over here is Iowa State, and I'm an Iowa supporter. So
Mm.
it's the closeness always breeds a little bit of contempt. So I love hearing the rivalry stories and the fact that they've met in grand finals, which has got to make it almost even more entertaining for the fans, the fact that your biggest bitter rival and you got a chance to dash their hearts while winning a premiership has got to be one of the coolest things. All right, so I love hearing this because of these treasured items. Can you remember the first South Fremantle item you were ever given or bought?
First South Fremantle item I bought would have been a Guernsey. Um, I bought this back in 2020. The last few years, I haven't been able to see a game because of the job I was doing. I was lucky in 2020 when the pandemic hit, to go down. Well, I just thought at the time I wasn't working weekends, and you know do something like I've always done, go and see a WAFL game. So I signed up to a membership and got a phone call a couple of days later from the president, Peter Christie. We had a bit of a chat. I was at the gym at the time, and um, a couple of days later, I went down to purchase a Guernsey.
Love it. Absolutely love it. So all right. So my next question for this, and I love this because I think being a supporter and being a fan are two things that honestly they're so unique. They're so different because everybody fans differently. Everybody is passionate about their club, their franchise, whatever you want to call it, in any different sport differently. So I love hearing people kind of describe to me how they fan, how they support. So if you just really quickly describe to me your fandom of South Fremantle. I mean, it is for some people, die hard is the word that they listen, they watch every game. If they can't watch, they try to find a way to listen. They'll watch a replay. They'll make sure that they don't get any social media. So I want to know really quickly, just describe your fandom of South Fremantle for me.
Fandom for me is every home game. I actually go to the game. I take the day off work. Um, basically, I take the train down to Fremantle and have a couple of beers, just watch the game. My lounge is full South Fremantle memorabilia that I've had over the last couple of years. So premiership posters, obviously a couple of team photos I bought off eBay. Um, the only away game I've been to was a South Fremantle Perth game at Lane Park. I think it was in 2021, and basically it actually rained that day. It pissed down. We lost the game by a couple of goals, nothing major, but it was my first away game, and there was quite a lot of South Fremantle supporters down there to support their team that day, and it's good to see the amount of South Fremantle supporters to go, or actually any supporter to go to an away game. It's rare that it happens, but it's really fantastic. It doesn't matter if you take the train, take a bus, drive down there even. But yeah, no, it's really good to see.
Yeah, I absolutely love the away supporters. I got to give them a tip to my cap when they do that because it's never easy to go on the road to wear the opposite colors and to still stand proud and support your club as much as possible, especially when you may be outnumbered 10-1. So absolutely, I
Mm.
truly appreciate that passion for your club. So you said kind of your first memory was seeing the grand final that West Coast knocked off Geelong. So now I ask, what was the first South Fremantle game you ever attended live?
I attended the 2009 Premiership at Subiaco Oval. I was lucky because um, back when I did retail, some shops weren't allowed to open on a Sunday, and I thought, great, this would be my chance to go and see a game finally. So got a ticket, went, and South Fremantle won. But I didn't get to see the whole game. I had to work the next day, and but yeah, no, I had a good time. Shame that Subiaco isn't there in its format. Yes, it used to be. It's now just a normal oval with a couple of bench seats, and yeah,
Awesome, awesome. So too bad you didn't get to stay for the entire game, but at least you got the
I
chance to
know.
see you got a chance to see your club, which is always worth it. So
Yeah,
I know sometimes that's just that's a passion thing. It's almost a pilgrimage a little bit for each and every fan. Alrighty. So as you said, South Fremantle has quite a history with some legendary players. So I asked this, and I know this is never easy for some. Favorite player of the past and favorite player currently on the South Fremantle list.
that's a very good question. Current on the list would be Hayden Schleut. He's the captain, and he's a pretty good player. Past, that would have to be. I'm just trying to think. Um, you can't go past Stephen Michael and the Rioli brothers. Those guys created magic back in the 80s and the late and the 70s. They were kicking goals like anything. Another person I want to put in as a favourite player would be Peter Sumich, excellent goal kicker. If you wanted someone to coach you how to kick goals, Peter Sumich would be a man for sure.
Awesome, awesome. Love hearing the legendary names. So that is fantastic. So, all right, my next question, I put this in because I love seeing the facial expressions when they describe this and the sparkle in their eyes each time. Most memorable moment so far as a South Fremantle supporter.
That'd be the 2020 grand final, honestly. Yeah. Um, Tell you why. Literally, it was actually three of the grand finals that day. Claremont were playing, and I think they won two. That would be the Colts and the reserves. They might have lost. I cannot remember, but I know they definitely lost the league. And they actually won by I think it was 2 points for the time. And no, it was just you've as a supporter, I've never seen a grand final played at a local ground. It had to be done because of COVID, but a lot of the supporters were happy that they played at South Fremantle at Fremantle Oval, and I don't think the people who were there that day would never forget it.
Love those moments. The smile on his face as he finished saying that. Absolutely love it. All right. So we've done a little bit of the past. We're going to go a little bit more to the present now. We've just finished the season. We're in the off season currently for all of the state sides in the AFL. So I asked this. I did a little research because I hate asking the question and feeling like a jerk because I don't know. So I looked it up. South Fremantle last year made the finals 12-5, really solid season.
Correct? Yep.
Didn't get the Chalkies in the finals, unfortunately. West Perth was the one who raised the cup and the premiership. So your
Yep,
thoughts
that's right.
on your thoughts on last year's South Fremantle team again, 12-5, really respectable season. You make the finals. So kind of what were your thoughts on South Fremantle last year?
South Fremantle were missing quite a few players from their previous season because they either went to the AFL or they retired completely from football. Couple of examples: Matt Parker was one of them, and Brock Higgins is another. Now, Matt Parker's returned. Well, they both Brock Higgins rather, and Matt Parker have both returned from doing what they were doing. So this year they're actually going to be playing the South Fremantle, and I really do hope that they actually make the finals, or actually even the grand final. That'd be a bloody ripper.
Absolutely love it. All right. So as I found out in the first episode, when I talked to the West Perth supporter, because I hadn't had a
Mm,
chance to dive into it, is that you're the off season for the state sides is much different than the AFL. You don't have a draft, you
mm,
don't have a
no,
trade period per se. It's basically
no,
you find the loose players that are no longer attached and you try to sign them. So have you been
correct.
do you keep an eye on South Fremantle's off season, kind of who's in, who's out? And then what are your thoughts on their off season? Do you think they've improved? Do you think that there might be holes in the team? What are your thoughts on South Fremantle's off season so far?
To be honest, it's a bit too early. They got as I said, they got Matty Parker back, and they got Brock Higgins. Um, they're the two main players that really um, got things started got things going in 2020. Um, Brock is actually an ex East Perth player, so he went from East Perth to South Fremantle, um, and basically kicked ass at South Fremantle. Um, so basically, getting those two players back, I hope that this season will be better than last season. Um, I think actually at the time, East Fremantle were actually above us. I think we're about fourth or fifth. Um, West Perth were on top, and East Fremantle was second. I think Claremont was third. I can't remember, but yeah.
Yep, West Perth, East Fremantle, Claremont, South Fremantle, and Peel were the top five. Were the top five teams in that order. Come the
Mm,
end of the season. So because then
shit.
Swan Districts was six, just outside, followed by Subi. So
Yep. Excellent. Um, also, West Coast also have a waffle team, and they use
mhm.
yes, and
They're about as good as
I
they're
don't. I'm
about as
not.
good as their AFL side, which was shit house at best.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, yep.
Yeah, I went
It
back and
was.
forth
Yeah.
with Rick Gauchi, who runs wafflefootyfacts.com, and he also is a huge Swan
Mm,
District supporter. And I remember him. I looked at him. I said, "Be honest." I said, "Was West Coast as bad as they were in the AFL?" Because I saw their record was one and was whatever one. They only had one win the entire season. He goes, Yeah, they were they had no cohesion between the two because the AFL side had so many injuries last year that the Waffle side paid for it because any great Waffle player would have to come up and play because of the injuries. So yeah, it's very interesting. I'm not going to talk to a West Coast Eagles reserve supporter because it doesn't make a lot of sense because they just be talking
Nah,
to me about the West Coast Eagles and I've already had a chat about them. So
yeah, exactly,
but I still thought
exactly.
I'd talk with Peel because I know Peel did kind of have um a history before Fremantle, before their kind of connection with Fremantle. But it's been a blast
Mm,
finding out about these sides because again, I know that both the SANFL and the Waffle both have a rich history, almost older, pretty much I think some older than
mm,
the AFL. So it's really cool to hear these
yes.
histories. So we've talked about the off season. And we always go to, I think this is the time of the year when people start getting excited. We're closer and closer to the start of next season. So
Mm.
originally I put this question down, but I've changed it a couple of times. What are your thoughts for next season? Are you one of those that with a few signings that you can jump back up the finals ladder, maybe finish third or maybe even second? And do you think South Fremantle has a crack at a premiership next year?
Never say never, mate. That's my words. Never
I
say
agree.
never. Whatever happens, happens. You know, we might lose a couple of games. That's fine. As long as we get into the finals, that's good for me.
That's the easy one. Just make finals, and then you never know what can happen in a finals because the finals
That's
are a
right.
different animal. Absolutely. So, alrighty. Well, being over here in the States again, the one thing that many sports fans love to do is we like to have control. We always talk about how we can do things better. And I think the
Mm,
general manager or list manager, as they say over in Australia, is always a fun thing to do. So I'm gonna have a little bit of fun here. For one day, I'm going to install you as the South Fremantle list manager. The other clubs in
mm.
the Waffle are free. You can pick off one player from the Waffle from any of the other clubs to join South Fremantle to give them that chance to win a premiership next year. Who's that one player and why?
That's a very good question. That's
I
a
love it.
very good question.
Hey, it makes you think about players from another team and how would they fit. And the fun part is especially I've noticed in the AFL episodes is do they grab this flashy superstar that may be in a position that you're already strength, or do they think of it tactically and grab somebody from a weak spot on their roster? So I'm interested.
I think they try and get the superstars, the ones who have done very well in a previous club. So, like I told you about Brock Higgins, for example,
Hmm.
he went from East Perth to South Fremantle, um, and he basically became in the last couple of years that I've been down there, literally a god of South Fremantle, and yeah. Um, to be honest, someone who's done a really good job with their club, you know, kicking goals, winning, for example, the Sandover medal.
Hmm.
Um, and of course, as we all know, the Waffle players don't get paid much compared to the AFL. That's another story again. Um, even if it was a AFL player wanting to retire, play a season in a Waffle, just as a change.
Hmm. No, makes sense. So who would you bring into South
Sorry,
Fremantle from the
sorry,
other
mate.
teams? Now you're good.
Uh,
You kind of get it is kind of overwhelming because you have so many
yeah,
options.
you do, you do. That'll be a very good. That's a very hard one. Someone from, I'll be honest, probably someone from East Fremantle. You know, try and convert him to South Fremantle. Um,
Ooh, the old
that's probably
rivalry
happened a
steal.
couple.
Love it.
Why not? If the going's good, get it, mate.
Hey,
Um,
no argument here.
Yeah, but
Alrighty. We'll move on to the next one. Anybody
sure.
that watches my channel knows that I am a huge advocate for women's footy. I think the women's game is a huge growth area for all footy clubs. I think growing women's clubs can actually help clubs stay strong, stay vibrant. So I asked this of you. I double checked to be sure because I know not all of the clubs in the waffle have a women's side. South Fremantle does. So
They do, yes.
do you keep an eye on the South Fremantle women's? And what are your thoughts on last year? If I saw right, unfortunately, didn't have as good a season as the men did. Unfortunately, only going 4-10 in their 14 games, finishing sixth on the ladder, so just the tiniest bit short of the finals here. So, do you keep an eye on the South Fremantle? And then your thoughts on a 4-10 season? But again, the Waffle W is still growing.
It is still growing indeed, Donnie. Um, I haven't really kept tabs with it, to be honest. Um, it's still early days.
Mhm.
Um, I've seen a game down a couple of years ago. I went down to Pingelly the day, and it was a Peel and Saffron Metal game, and literally, um, I went on a bus trip with the footy girls, and they were playing down there, and coming back was great time, and they didn't win that game, but it's great to see like a club like any team, particularly the women's team, get together, and you know camaraderie, and you know celebrate, if it was a win or if it was a loss or a draw. Um, but this year, um, South Fremantle have been lucky to give us members um, passes to the women's league. You know, I'm actually tempted this year to go down and have a look, to see how they're going. It may not be a great game compared to the men's waffle or the men's South Fremantle team, but hey, they're doing something. They're making the game grow, and that's what it's all about, making the
Mhm.
game grow.
Well, I say this to many people, and I know for some people it's a controversial topic. I don't think it's controversial. I think many people just they don't understand the nuances of the women's game. I think the women's game is a little bit of a different animal, and it takes a little bit
Mm,
to kind of appreciate it. But I say this: you got to look at it. Men's football or men's professional, again, debatable with professional, considering it is a relatively newish thing. It is less than 40 years old when it comes to full-time professional footy, at least
mm,
AFL wise. The women's professional women's has only been around for 7 years, but that first
mm,
season in 2017, I think opened a proverbial Pandora's box that I think the AFL now is
mm,
going, whoa, because if you saw Victoria, South Australia, WA, Queensland, Tassie, all had significant growth when it comes to their women's leagues.
mm.
Young girls were playing footy at an astronomically high level. There was one, I can't remember what state it was, had 300% growth from 2017 to
Wow.
2018 just because of the AFLW. I think with more pathways, you don't have the girls don't have to stop at Oz kick at 12 years old. Now they have footy
Mm,
pass all the way up to NAB league, and then again Waffle, Sample, VFLW, and now AFLW. I think you're going
mm.
to see better and better girls players. And I know eventually they will be full-time professional. It's going to happen. How quickly,
Yeah.
that's the debate. Again, whether what kind of debate it is, I don't know. I think some people come at that debate a little bit skewed. So we'll have to
Mm,
see. But I say this, I know it's not what we're used to when it comes to the men's footy, but men's footy has 150 years plus of it
mm.
being taught, coached, and
Yeah.
played. The women's, it was very sketchy for longest periods of times. Yes, women's footy has been around since the 70s, even later for some in Victoria because there were women's footy. It just was not as structured as it is now, where you've got coaches coaching under sevens, under eights, under tens, and
Mm,
so on and so forth. look at some of the young women in the AFLW and how talented they are. Look at Georgie Prasparkas, Maddie Prasparkas, Ellie McKenzie, um, Charlie Robota, Montana Ham, some of these really, really good players. Wait till you have an entire draft of girls that have been playing
Mm,
for years and years and years. This league is going to only grow. And I think the AFL, yes, did they expand quickly? Yes, I think they did. But they have to because
mm,
this growth is it's going to bottleneck. And if they can open it up just the tiniest bit, yes, it may decrease the skill, shall some say, in it, but it's only going to give more opportunities as we go. I think the WAFL, as I see, there's only 7. I think East Perth joins this year, so I think there will be 8 sides
mm-hmm,
in the WAFL W. Perth still needs a team. I think eventually, once all these clubs, there's going to be a plethora of women to be able to take these spots. There's going to be no reason for a club not to have both a men's and women's side, and I cannot wait for that day. I will step off my women's football soapbox for just this bit. I'm sorry about that, Stephen, but
no, all good, mate.
I
All
love
good.
talking about it because I've had the chance to interview a few of the women's players, Alicia Eva, Steph Kiochi,
Mm,
Alicia Newman, Brianna Tarrant, Daisy Bateman, and they were absolutely lovely individuals and great footy players. I love watching them, love supporting them. And then I had the pleasure of talking with a Sandford W player, Ali Farrell, and I'm so excited to watch their games because it just that connection and I absolutely love it. And the connection they have with the fans is absolutely fantastic. So, like I said, women's footy, I understand some people don't like it, but you'd be surprised how fascinating and fun it is to watch. And I've said this, sometimes I think the women go harder at the footy than the men do. I
mm. Mm.
controversial for some people, but I've watched some women's games. They go after the footy for sure. So all right. So
It's very controversial.
for some, yes, for some. All righty. So we jump from my women's soapbox to I, I can't not talk about it just the tiniest bit. Do you support one team in the AFL? If so, why? And then do you also support their women's side as well?
That'd be the West Coast Eagles. I don't support the women's side. Um, well, it was actually their first season last year because, well, yeah, um, they it was their first season. They didn't do too well. As you know, they're trying to grow like any other club. You know, but we're talking women. We're talking the men's side here as well, aren't we?
Well, there's not much, unfortunately, with both
Yeah.
sides. Unfortunately, was not a lot of success in West
No,
Coast
there
Eagles
wasn't.
land last year.
There wasn't.
Unfortunately, it was hard to be an Eagles supporter last year, but
Yeah, it
those who
was. It
stayed and
was.
supported, I respect because lean times are hard at times. They're really hard.
It is. And you got to have those times, to
Hmm.
rebuild, get yourself better. You know, there's always there's always next season. You
Hmm.
know, at the end of the day, it's just a game.
Yeah.
And if you don't win the game, that's fine. There's always next time.
Hmm. Well, and,
Um,
and you've got it. The biggest thing that I think with West Coast is they just have to grow their list. They've been so successful for so long, always making finals that
they have.
they haven't had that youth infusion of young draft picks. So I think a couple of
No.
lean seasons may actually kind of help that lack of youth in the club. So I'm really
Mm,
hoping a tough loss to lose Willie Rioli, but I think the headache that he has kind of become over the last couple of seasons, I almost think it might
mm.
have been a good move. Like I know some
I
people
reckon
go ahead.
it had to be done. It,
Hmm.
it had to be done. Um, Obviously, his old man passed away.
Hmm.
Um, and, you know, you got to realize these players have they have a life outside of football. They've got family.
Hmm.
And if we had a player over here a couple of weeks ago from the Eagles, his mum passed away.
Hmm. Brett Basso.
A funeral, yeah, and condolences to the Basso family this time.
Hmm.
And you know, I feel for these guys because they have a lot of pressure on them, not just from the media, but everyone. You
Mm-hmm.
know, if they need to have some time off during the season, if they want to take a year or two off football, and do what they want to do, or some more their, to get themselves right, and so be it. You know, we're all human. They're human. You know,
Yeah, you gotta let them be them. Unfortunately, I think
absolutely.
they're put on
You
a
got to let them
pedestal.
be them. Absolutely.
Well, they're put on a pedestal a little bit because they're professional athletes, and
Mm,
I think it happens a lot
mm.
in our societies that they're put on
It
this
does.
pedestal, and they're kind of treated like gods. But when they step down
Mm,
and they're on the regular, it throws you off. Instead of thinking of them as a normal person that just they're a professional footy player, but they're still a regular person. That
absolutely.
they get this
Yeah.
godlike status, and I think it's something that I think a lot of people, it's hard to break because we're so used to, oh my
Mm,
God, that's insert like Josh Kennedy from the West Coast Eagles. Like but he's just a blokey bloke that wants to go have a beer and be himself. He just wants to be himself. So it's like, it's this weird
mm,
dichotomy of being a fan that you god like some of these players, but you forget sometimes they are just normal, every regular day people that they're just their job is being a professional footballer. So
that's right.
it is
Yeah.
just such a weird thing sometimes to do is to take your mind and kind of shut off fan for a little bit and just go, hey, that's Josh Kennedy. Have a beer, sir. Thank you for what you do on the footy field, and let them be. Don't hassle them. Don't. "Hey, can I get an autograph?" No, it's let him be him. Let him enjoy. Or he's with his daughters. Let him be a dad. Don't try to make
Yeah.
him be
Exactly.
Josh Kennedy, the football player. Let him be Josh Kennedy, the dad.
Mm,
So, alrighty. So
mm,
I'm gonna have a little bit of fun. These next two questions again, they're AFL connected, but they're kind of opinion, kind of what your thought on. So, the grand final in 2020 and 2021, as you said, were COVID affected and did not play in Victoria. And I was fascinated by the fact that Victorian media, which is primarily discuss Victorian teams, which again, God
mm,
bless them, they do it because they've got 10 teams to talk about, so there's a lot to talk about. They I was fascinated when they brought up the topic of should the AFL look into maybe making the grand final permanently a traveling grand final, a little bit like the Super Bowl is over here in the States.
mm-hmm.
And I'm interested as a WA person, what are your thoughts on that? Are you somebody that you like that idea because you experienced Optus Stadium having the grand final? Or is there a little part of you that does kind of like the tradition of the MCG for the grand final because biggest stadium in Australia. So as we speak.
I actually like tradition, so it has to stay at the MCG for sure. You
Mhm,
know, get 100,000 people in there on the last Saturday in September. It's just electric. I've been there a few times to
mhm.
the grand final in Melbourne. There's nowhere else in the world where I want to be except in that ground on the grand final day. You got to see it to believe it, mate.
Mhm.
Um, yes, the weather's cold over there, but you know that's where it should be. That's where it should stay. You know, I one thing I hate about the AFL at the moment, and I'm going on a tangent here. I hate how they keep changing the rules. It's like this with the AFL. It's going to be like bloody netball. And used to be guys who play VFL, AFL. Sorry, it's still a bit Victoria centric to me,
That's
but
fine.
they just um, they just don't include anyone else in the interstate teams like say the Eagles, Dockers, Port, Adelaide, Sydney, even though they came from South Melbourne, GWS, and the two Queensland teams. They don't get us like to me. It's just in the game as well. The umpires seem to favour the Victorian teams, but you know, getting back to what I was saying, keep the tradition in Melbourne, keep it at the MCG, and you know, because you're not going to get anywhere else in this country to get 100,000 people. in those seats on the last day of September, last Saturday of September.
Hmm.
And to me, that's an Australian tradition. Keep it that way. Don't change it.
I again, this is it's one of those where everybody's got an opinion. Again, the 50-year contract. Again, the comment section is usually my 50-year. It's like I know about the 50-year contract. It's the
Yeah.
pie in the sky thought process. Again, I don't think it's going to happen. That contract is ironclad. The MCC is not going to let it go. But it's very interesting. Like I said, that Victorian media were the one that brought it up. So,
Mm,
all right. So
yeah.
we talk about the
And
grand
think of
final.
it this way.
Go
And
ahead.
think of it this way. It's income to the MCC, who
Hmm.
technically own the
Hmm.
MCG.
Yep.
You know, and this is what people don't realise. If you have a game or any sort of game in even with a waffle, SANFL, AFL waffle, it's income to that ground, income
Hmm.
into the council, income to the club, you know?
And they defend it, and they defend it, they defend it.
Fuck, I know if
uh
they do.
yeah, all right. So that's the end of the season, but this season, this upcoming season that we're talking about, that we're getting closer and closer to, has something a little bit different this year, and I'm very fascinated by it, and that is the NRL ripoff of Magic Round, which they have delicately called Gather Round. Whether
Mm,
the name is sufficient or not, we won't get into that particular debate today. But I'm interested to hear about this because again I've dove into Magic Round in the NRL, and again I think it's a really unique thing that they do. I'm fascinated by this as a WA person. Again, you don't NRL isn't as massive over in WA as it is in Queensland
no.
in New South Wales. What are your thoughts on the AFL kind of doing this, that all 9 rounds are going to be in SA? And then do you have any interest
Nine
in maybe
games.
9 games? Yep. Yep.
That's Carton.
All 9 games are going to be in SA, on not all of them on the Adelaide Oval. But
Yep.
do you have any interest in this particular thing? And then would you maybe spend the money, go to SA and try to watch a game or two?
Personally, I don't like it. Um, yes, it's income into the state, income into the grounds,
Mhm.
but I don't like it because, um, how can I say, they can keep changing things or keep doing things. Um, Personally, up till about 99 or 98, 99, they had state of origin, you know.
Mhm.
I believe, and, it'll be WA versus the Allies, WA, or even SA versus Victoria, whoever, you know. But why don't they bring back something like state of origin into the games?
Mhm.
People would go to Subiaco Oval in the Wacker in the day, and see other players from other clubs play for WA, you know, that you may not see at Subiaco Oval or at the Wacker at the time,
Mhm.
you know, um, play for WA. People don't realise that a lot of players from here who played or even in the AFL rather, played for waffle clubs, you
Mhm.
know, and they chose obviously the state of origin to play for their state that they grew up in or they were born in. So I'm not, as I said earlier, I'm more of a traditionalist. The comes to AFL, you know, have one round or even a couple of rounds a year, state of origin. You know, don't put in the one yet. Well, obviously have each team play in like or actually have the WA Victoria game in either WA Victoria. Have one over here, vice versa. Well, for Victoria WA or even Melbourne, whatever. Um, but yeah, you probably Magic Round might be a bit much, but at the same time, if AFL want to try something different, that's fine. Let them do it, but you know, bring bring back some traditional.
Mhm.
Give it a go. You never know what's going to happen. I've been saying this for years. Bring back state of origin, but you know, you try and tell these guys in the AFL, they're like, "Oh, we'll do something different. Bring Magic Round in," but you know, it's their first time doing it. Give it a go. If it doesn't work out, well, that's fine.
Hmm.
It's just like COVID. When people had to when we had a home base here, some of the teams would come over here and play at
Hmm.
Optus Stadium, or even in Sydney or whatever state. But it also gives people a chance in that state, if I don't support Adelaide or Port Adelaide, to go and see their own team that they like.
Hmm.
But
Yeah,
yeah, I wouldn't mind.
it'll be very interesting for me. I love your idea. The one thing that I agree with, I've heard the calls for is that instead of playing multiple teams twice, why don't you just go to a 17 game season, so then you don't have to worry about the
Mm,
players playing extra games, and just and do like they said, a state of origin, or a like preseason tournament, the old NAB Club Cup that they used to do. So then that
mm,
these players, I mean, you say so much that you're trying to take down the wear and tear, but now you add a 23rd game to this season, instead of
mm,
reducing it back to 17, playing everybody, and then just having a state of origins tournament where you have WASA, Victoria, and then the allies, and then just have a 4 team tournament where they each play each other once. You set a bracket, and then you play 2 semifinals and a final, and then that's the winner of state of
mm,
origin. So the most games you're going to get is 6 extra games. Well,
mm,
there's your 23 that you're already talking about, and not everybody's going to do it. So some of the younger kids can get more training opportunities with the coaches and become a better footy player,
mm,
while the superstars go play their state of origin. So I don't know. It's I'm with you on this. I'm fascinated by it. I think the SA fans are gonna come out. I think the games are gonna be well attended. Whether the games are the quality, because it's still early
mm.
in the season. I think it's round 5, so it's still really early in the
Yeah.
year, which I think it does reduce the chances of a lot of players being injured, but it also, for me, the footy still hasn't progressed. Round 1 through 3 sometimes can be a little rough because teams are still kind of
Mm,
getting into their groove when it comes
yeah.
to being fit, when it comes to their gel, and kind of who's their best 22. So it'll be fascinating on that. So we'll have to see. Again, do I wish gather round success? Yes. I never wish negative energy on anybody, because I think that's bad.
100%.
But I like I said, I think the SA government's already said that every single hotel in the CBD in Adelaide have already been sold out for that weekend. So I think it's going to be
Mm,
well attended. It's how's
mm,
the footy? And I cross my fingers that the weather's okay, because if it rains, that Adelaide Oval is going to be absolutely destroyed by Sunday if it is not ideal weather. So
mm,
cross my fingers for good weather in April in South Australia. We'll have to see. So I told a few people this. The next couple of questions are a little bit of what I would consider research. I have not been to Australia. It is my goal. It is on my bucket list. I want to get to as many grounds and as many states as I can. I know it won't be cheap, but I want to do it because, for me, as a American who loves this sport, I want to see as much as I possibly can,
mm,
even if it means getting there and spending a couple days, even if I have to crash on a couch if I have to. So I'm doing this. When I go to the footy, I want to be prepared. As Americans, we love our food at our sport. So I want to be sure I have this right. When I go to the ground, what is your go-to food when you go to the footy?
it's usually pie and chips for me. Mate, you can't go wrong with pie and chips.
Mhm. The two most popular answers to
Yep.
that question. Absolutely love it. Alrighty. And
And
then
you know what? Also during winter, it's bloody cold some
mhm.
grounds, so you got to keep yourself bloody warm.
Something to hold on to keep your hands warm, and something to go down that'll keep your tummy warm too. Absolutely.
Mm,
Love it. Alrighty. And then the most important, when you go to the footy, you got to have a good seat. You got to be able to see the best possible angle. So, where is your
mm.
ideal place to sit when you go to the footy?
If it's a really cold day, the bar.
I love it.
Why not, mate?
On the
Why
ground,
not?
on the ground, at the ground. Where is your ideal place to sit at the ground? We'll preface it that way.
All right. it'll be undercover for sure. Basically, either probably in the front row or in the back row of where I'll be sitting. Previous years, when I've been down to Fremantle Oval, I've always had a front seat. Um, this year, I chose not to go for a seat, but just for a bit of a change, um, there might be something. Part of a membership I've got, you'll get there might be a seat in this area, so who knows?
Alrighty. And then my last question that I have each and every episode, just because
Sure.
I love hearing the answers because everybody's a little bit different. And the best part is I'm kind of starting to compose a list of these games and I'm going to try to find some of them online and be able to watch them. Favorite game of footy you have ever seen on the telly, at the ground, doesn't matter. Favorite game of footy you have ever seen.
Favorite game would have to be. Shit, that's a really good question. Would it be the 2018 grand final when West Coast kicked that point or that goal, and they actually got into the game? They actually won the grand final against Collingwood. That would be, for me, the highlight of any game, any grand final that I've seen with West Coast. Getting that goal, that really made them on top. I actually thought Collingwood were going to win, but it was neck and neck all the way through, and Eagles won by a point or a couple of points. I know it seems that long ago when I talk about it. It doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. It's
Yeah,
crazy. It's crazy to think, and I have to admit, as an American, I did I did support Collingwood for most of that game just because of Mason Cox and his connection to the States. But
yeah, that's understandable. Yeah.
I have to say this though, that still is one of my favorite grand finals ever, just because it was so neck and
Mm,
neck. It was such a great game. It's number two on my all time list of grand finals that I have seen, just behind one of the reasons that I'm a Swan supporter is the 2012 grand final is my number one, but number two was 2018 because
mm,
you can't do any better than a game like that. And Dom Sheed
yep.
with the gun barrel straight kick that absolutely was
Yes. Dom Sheed.
perfection on a platter, absolutely fantastic. So, all right, Steven, this has been a fantastic conversation. I've loved learning about South Fremantle, and the chat has been absolutely amazing. I truly, truly appreciate you coming on the podcast today.
Thank you very much indeed, Johnny. Have a good night, mate. Take it easy. Go to
Uh,
Mighty Bulldogs.
Go the mighty Bulldogs. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for our episode again today. We're getting closer and closer and closer to the AFL and the stateside starting again. Keep an eye out. I'm going to try to do some stateside reviews this year so we can keep track on how these leagues are going. We will try to keep you updated on that. I will try to keep you updated on my socials. If you know anybody that are VFL sample and WAFL fans, please let them know about this because I'd love to see my audience grow to some of the stateside fans because I think footy is something I genuinely love. So I'm wanting to learn more. So that is going to do it for our episode today. We'll be back again very